Welcome back. So this first story is from Immutab 1E. That's an interesting name. And they say, I have a couple of stories. First experience I can fully remember was I was 5 years old and our family dog was a wolf hybrid. My uncle was a breeder. His name was Lobo, and I'm assuming the dog, not the uncle, and he were very strongly bonded. My parents decided to get another dog, a Doberman. She and Lobo did not get along, and my parents decided to rehome Lobo. I was devastated. I can still remember sitting in my yard on my knees, bawling my eyes out, as his new owners pulled away with him. One thing my parents stressed to the new owner, who was someone my dad worked with, is to never let him outside without a leash, because he would 100% take off. Well, they only had him for about a week before their kids decided they wanted to take Lobo for a walk. One of them opened the door before the other one had the leash hooked onto his collar, and he bolted. They never found him. Fast forward to about a month later. It was late in the evening and dark out. My mom was cleaning up dinner, and I was in the kitchen with her. I was standing at the back door that went into our screened porch, and I heard Lobo howl. Being a hybrid, he had a pretty distinct sound, and I knew it was my boy. I ran out and opened the door to the screened porch that led outside. There he was, waiting outside the door. I opened my arms, and he ran to jump on me. But when I went to wrap my arms around him, he was just gone. As a 5-year-old, I didn't understand what happened, and it felt like losing him all over again. It wasn't until years later, when I was in middle school, that I got a book about pet ghost stories from our school library, and read stories of people's pets coming to them in their final moments to say goodbye. And I realized what had really happened that night when I was 5. That one's sad. Oh my God. Okay, so the next little experience I've had is I've had lots of experiences in my life, but another one that stands out to me is this. I was 20 years old and was living in the next state over from the one I grew up in. It was about a 3-hour drive for me to get from where I lived to where I grew up. While I was away, a tragic incident happened at my parents' house. A family friend, we'll call him Jake, had come over, and he was drunk. My dad was cooking in the deep fryer. It was set to 400 degrees. Jake fell, and as he fell, he managed to pull the deep fryer off the stove onto himself. He inhaled and swallowed some of the oil, as well as having it dumped over his face and upper body. He lived for 2 weeks in a burn hospital before passing away. When my parents told me he passed away, I immediately found a friend to drive me home. That night, myself, my mom, Jake's wife, and his stepdaughter all went out to a local bar where they had put up collection jars for his medical expenses. Since I wasn't 21, I was the designated driver, but the three of them got quite drunk. We got back to Jake's house, and his wife, stepdaughter, and my mom were in the kitchen crying and praying. I was uncomfortable and went into the living room. From where I sat on the couch, I was facing the archway into the dining room, and could see the doorway into the kitchen from the dining room. I was looking down at the floor and got this weird feeling. I looked up and saw Jake. He was standing in the doorway from the dining room into the kitchen, watching them. He had his arms crossed in front of him and was sadly shaking his head. Jake was always a big goof and would never have wanted anyone to cry over him. I saw him as clearly as if he were a living person. I could see his clothing, including what color it was, everything. I didn't mention it to anyone because I didn't want people to think I was crazy or something. A few days later, my mom and I had to run to the store to get black pantyhose for the funeral. On the way home, my mom mentioned that Jake's wife thought his spirit was around due to some random things happening in the house. I told her, he definitely is there. Sounding skeptical, she said, how would you know that? So I told her what I had seen. As I described what he was wearing, her face went pale. At one point, I started crying as I told her, he wasn't burned, Mom. He was okay. He wasn't burned. When I noticed she had gone pale, I asked her what was wrong. She told me that the clothing she had described to her was what Jake was wearing the night he was burned. Like I said, I was 3 hours away when it happened. I had absolutely no way of knowing what he'd had on. That's good. I like that one. That one's a good story. The next one comes to us from Swati22. Most of the stories here were when I was a child, but I do remember them clearly, as I did not find any explanation whatsoever. I'm kind of a skeptic, so I always try to find a reason, apparently. 1. In our family house, my big brother and I shared a room together. I was upstairs alone, minding my own business. My brother was downstairs with my dad, talking. So I heard some noise from the door. It was opened, and eventually did not care much about it. We had a darts table. Not sure how that's what it's called. How it's called in English. Scry. Um, but as I was sitting there, the darts literally landed next to me, like someone was trying to target me. I just heard the noise of it landing next to me on the floor, and I was like, okay, what the fuck? I yelled at the door, "Are you crazy? That's not funny." No one answered. I went there, angry, ready to roast my brother, but no one was there. Went downstairs and asked my brother whether he was there. He said no way. My dad said the same. No idea what that was. The table was not above me, so it would not have fallen down from it. Number 2. Our home is lovely, by the way. I never experienced anything else. We built it so that no one lived there before. We were playing hide and seek upstairs, and we have more rooms, so there was plenty of opportunities, and we played it in the dark with some other kids, friends from the family. I was next, so I started to count down and then began to search for the guys. As I entered our room, I felt something laying on the floor, curled up, like imitating a table. So I would feel their back, and the spine and ribs through a t-shirt. I thought it was my brother, so I sit up on hoping that he'll start laughing. Nothing. I started to freak out, ran to the light switch immediately. My brother was in the corner and my cousin under the desk, and I was like, dude, I touched you. I caught you. And they were like, what the fuck? No. They did not know who they were talking to. Chills, bro, down my entire body. I was like, no more playing. Like, what the fuck? Who was I touching and sitting on? I don't know. Number 3. Actually happened some months ago in our apartment. I live now with my boyfriend. I don't really like to be alone at night, and it rarely happens, thank God, but that night I had to. So I locked the door after finishing my Netflix marathon, going to bed where I decided to read some, so it helps me to fall asleep. I never ever shut my bedroom door. Don't know why, this is just one of the weird shits. All of a sudden I hear something right in front of the door. That was actually our entryway, so that's where we put our shoes and coats, etc. So what I heard was similar to someone putting off their shoes, like a cloth sound, all clear and loud enough. For a few seconds, I was like, dude, you high, no one there, chill. After a couple of minutes, again, we have no cats or dogs or dragons or nothing, and it would cause this sound. The second time, I started to freak out. My initial thought is that someone broke in, but I locked my door, so I was sure that since we were living in a flat, that there would be a code they'd need to get in, etc. There was no way. Neighbors never make that much sound, especially late at night, and it came to my apartment, not through the walls. I have never been that scared from such a thing, so my hands were shaking looking for my boyfriend's number. No answer. Ringing him again. Meanwhile, I am hearing the noise again for the third time. I did not even dare to walk down to the door to close it. There was just some crack where I could see from the outside, but it was dark. I did not look away from that whatsoever. I eventually rang my friend, who was thankfully awake, and was like, girl, someone is in my fucking house right now, and I'm not kidding. Like I was whispering. She knew that I am not the type, so I never call in the middle of the night if I was not being freaked out. So she got scared as well, especially when I described the noise. I dared to close the room door with the keys from inside, and she stayed on the phone with me until my boyfriend arrived late, not that night. Then he said he heard something similar before, when I was not at home, and he was at the computer. He even sometimes took off his headset, but we don't know what it was. Nothing else has happened in our apartment. That's a little freaky and weird. Definitely some stuff that I wouldn't want to experience myself.